The next lecture is very close with the topic as we heard in this presentation. I invite Mrs. Andreja Rihter from Institute for Slavic Culture is in Ljubljana. She's historian, Master of Arts with very interesting working history. He served as Ministry of Culture 4 years and the representative in our assembly and director of the regional museum in Civic. Please, Andreja Rihter.
Thank you very much, Branko. Good afternoon. Also from my point of view. Today I'm Andreja Rihter, Museum of Recent History. Because it's past, we would like to talk about future and today. And I'm very pleased that I heard the presentation of Cecilia at the University Museums that they are doing also the program with the children. Why? Because in my museum, Museum of Recent History in Celje, where I'm also involved in the programs, we have still the only one children museum in Slovenia, and the mission of this museum is to explain to children what the heritage is, what kind of role the curators have, and why it's so important to collect the heritage, the stories, and so on. And it would be very nice if your museum could participate. This year is a conference, Hands-on International, which is the World Association of Children Museum, which I'm also involved. And the conference is in Stockholm. So it's so close because we have a lot of members from the private museum, from the government museums and so on, but we didn't hear anything never about the university museums and the programs with the children. That it's only my beginning. But I will be very boring, and 15 minutes is not so much. I will leave my presentation to Branko, and perhaps you will want to see some more information about this project, which I was involved for 3 years with the University of Vienna, the philosophy faculty, the history, and which is explaining about history education and the programs. And the structure of the presentation, first of all, some statistics, and then trends, and the professional portrait, and at the end, trends as concerning content, methodology, and teachers' training, curricula. Euroclio was also the member and the partner in this project, because the project means the main sponsor is Council of Europe, and also means that the Europe means the Council of Europe members, not the EU from Brussels. This means mostly then about 40 countries. And first, European trends in the connection of the organization of teachers' educations. Really, I will go through why I'm explaining also. Mostly you are from the museums, and the museums are cultural institutions, and you should be aware of that. But mostly today, the museums are the mediator in the society. And a lot of 50% of the museum's work is training, education, or explaining the information from the collections to the visitors or users. And we should be aware that we are the cultural institutions, not the educational institutions, which the schools, university, and so on. But on the other hand, in educational system, everything is collected, everything is statistic, and so you see what we collected in these 3 years, all these facts and figures, that 40 million students and so on and so on. Unfortunately, I was looking for that kind of information about the cultural institution, about the museums. We don't have. Perhaps in the future, to prepare some project to have the statistics about the cultural institutions or the museums. Will be very, very interesting. Also, we started in Slovenia to collect some information about our museums and our programs, but unfortunately that was just an idea. And also this demographic term is also very, very important for the future. More than 50% of the secondary teachers in Europe will be retiring during the next 10, 12 years, which is very, very interesting. And then social change. Who are the new teachers today? We know that history teacher is so important, and the classroom today it's not only and only the educational place. Today the teacher should be in contact with the new technology, with everyday information, which is very, very difficult. The teacher, not the history teacher, should know today's answers to the question what is going on in Syria, what is going on in Brazil, what is going on and so on. This is not so easy, and also is connection past, today and future. So what kind of teachers will be in the future? I hope you read all these facts. And distributions of teachers by age group in general, we see that mostly the teachers today in these countries are, what can I say, I'm not old, I'm 57, so but we see that the young population, the young teachers are in very, very small numbers. The civic and history education teachers and academic professionals over Europe. And then we have still some questions. Which responsibilities to be kept by the national state administration? We have some participants from the Ministry of Education with us, so perhaps you can think about that and to discuss with your colleague in your ministry. Which responsibilities to be given to private and independent suppliers? We know, and also our experience in Slovenia is that we have a lot of, every year, perhaps last year we stopped, this year we stopped, about private, also universities and faculties and so on and so on. And which responsibilities to be developed on European level. Always when we are talking about that, I have in my mind the museums, again as a cultural institutions, to be part of this process. Because of that it's so important that the education, it's not today, not anymore only in the educational system, because it's also in the cultural institutions. Again, to my children's museum, which is now 17 years old, and I'm always explaining to the Ministry of Education, think about that. The children, when they start the educational process, they are 6 years old, but before they are our visitors in our children's museums, in our museums, in our pedagogical programs, just like in our university museums. And that is so, so important, because nowadays the children, 3, 4, 5 years, they are starting to educate, to have some information. And because of that, it's so important that the cultural institution and the educational institutions, they are doing together the programs and responsibilities for futures. And again, type of institutions offering full study programs, of course, mostly the universities, because means others, other. I think we are here, the cultural institution, the museums, but unfortunately no research about these questions. And then some very, very typical and some facts that the organization of full study programs today about history in Europe means history and civic and citizenship education, social studies, politics and cultural studies. The terminology in, I would say, in our region, Slovenia, Serbia, Bulgaria, and this region is completely different as terminology when we are talking in the northern part of Europe or in the western part of Europe. Completely different understanding social studies or politics. So again, it's very, very important. And depending on the level of accreditation for a certain school level, the average length of studies will be between 3 and 5 years, mostly. And also this information, 2/3 of countries have established entry requirements, but only 1/5 of countries organize qualitative forms of assessment. Okay, I should pass some slides because it's a lot of them. Minimum time devoted to the process of training in percentage. We see the graph is very, very visible, so you can and some forms again. Okay, models of training. This is a lot of some information I will just pass through. If you will see something, I mentioned that go on website Civic and History Education, and on this website you will see a lot of information because you can use it and also have very good information for your daily life, professional. Training academic didactic communication. Simulation of academic history, curriculum, what is the similarities and so on. Do we have also museum subject history courses? Yes, we have in Slovenia. Because in Slovenia we have a lot of history museums with other names, but we are doing mostly the history. Just like we heard, also in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Croatia and Slovenia, the history is the most important subject. Slovenia, we have 5,000 years of our history, but only last 20 and something years our independence, and still we have the main problem in Slovenia. We are still discussing who the winner of the Second World War was, and that who is then responsible? Historians, teachers, or whatever. So a lot of questions and so on. Common and narrative history, new trends in historiography, economic and social history, everyday life history, general. That are all the subjects that we are doing in our museums, our exhibitions, permanent or temporary exhibitions. Museums, we opened our doors to these questions. Unfortunately, in educational program or in curriculum, don't. Unfortunately, still not. I know some. I think I will stop here because it's a lot of slides. What I'll just present in short the project, which finished in December last year. But we will continue, and the resume will be next year, because this year is part of evaluation. And history teaching is so important for Europe. I think we have the historians, as a curator, as an educator, we have a lot of responsibilities, and we should be aware of that. Because of that, it's so important to be in connection, the teacher and the curator, and this is my main point. And we have a lot of statistical information from educational part. So let's think about for future to receive and to do some evaluation and research also in the culture sphere. And that is the historians. Historians, we are always doing a lot of researches. Let's do it for ourselves and to be a partner for educational colleagues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, colleague Andreja Rihter, and we want to stop not here but continue with short discussion. Have you? Oh.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank Andreja Rihter for this very nice presentation. It's a pity we don't have more time to see all these interesting researches. Well, as I mentioned, I work for Ministry of Education, for Board of Education, for history teaching, and I'm in this position for about 17 years. So dealing with history teachers and working on developing new curricula, I can say that we made a big step forward, especially in the last 10, 15 years, because we found a lot of good connections, contacts with museums in Slovenia, also with archives, especially Celje archives, they are very, very cooperative. Also, we are encouraging our teachers to visit museums with their children, and also from the other side, we got a hand from our colleagues from museums, from archives. So I can say that we both did step forward, and I think it's good progress. That's true that in our documents, in curricula, it's still only a kind of, how can I say, proposition. You may go to archive, to museum, so it's a suggestion, but it's not, our teachers are still not obliged. So those who are, who look forward, whose view is longer, they try to find the context by themselves, also with help of all these institutions. Some are still more ex-cathedra teachings, but I think that they are less and less. So I'm looking forward, maybe the change of generation in next 10, 12 years will also make here some changes. But though I say it goes slowly, step by step, it's still, I can say, I am much more satisfied with this cooperation with museums, archives, because when I was in school as a school teacher, it was different. So we were self-initiatives who started this.
Thank you for this comments to colleague Vojko from Institute for Education in Ljubljana. Well, I think that more or less we are really tired and we need to take a short break.